Mm-hmm.
Thank you for adding so much to that conversation.
Mm-hmm. You is right.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
This is Brittany Haig from Thomas I Group in Atlanta, Georgia, and you're listening to Help Me with HIPAA podcast.
Thank you for that intro. This is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs and Security First IT, and joining me is Donna Grindle Carden. Good morning, Donna.
Sup, David?
So today we're going to be talking about what you wear. What you wearing?
I know, right? All it's wearables. I love how that, we get to have all of these new, when you allow nerds to start making up words, then you get really cool vocabulary. Googling, we talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Wearables, and, you just,
Yeah, shareables,
malware,
all kind of cool stuff.
Yeah, you just never know. So, and then you add all the shortcuts: Twitter, tweet, retweet. Anyways,
yeah.
All right.
I like the people who mix them. They call it, they don't call it Twitter; they call it tweeter. Anyway.
Yeah, and the book.
Yeah.
We know what that is, and I love it that everybody's getting off of Facebook and going to Instagram.
Yeah,
but Insta is owned by Facebook.
Yeah,
it's like it doesn't. How's that help?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't do the jumping to. I don't participate that much in them anyway. So
yeah, I don't either.
I'm one of these guys that's like, the proliferation of social media has resulted in an antisocial society.
Indeed.
But
let's talk about wearables, which in some ways does contribute to the antisocial society, but in other ways it makes people more social, because they can carry it with them and not look down every minute when you have, like the watch.
Yeah, but it also makes people paranoid that I've recently discovered since
because they don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I just got a Fitbit, so it's my very first wearable. Because I've avoided the wearables because I didn't need one. Not that I need a Fitbit, but it's my catalyst for making me work out because I can see results. I can see my heart rate going up.
My Apple Watch does all those reminders telling me stand up stuff, and you're being nagged, and some of us need that. But I'll tell you, I didn't think I really needed one. I got one because, often if you're in our business and you don't have the coolest stuff, then everybody's like, "What do you mean you don't have the coolest stuff? Are you really,
Yeah, you got analog
cool
watch?
People." It's a $1,500 watch, but it's not. It doesn't do anything. But I tell you what, when I thought I'd broken mine beyond repair. Freaked me right on out.
What am I gonna do?
I know. No. I can't. I was like, I cannot believe how attached I've gotten to this thing.
No more vibrating on my arm. Yeah. So I'm wearing mine the other day. I'm out to dinner and it's vibrating constantly, seems like. And so every time it does, I'm looking at it. And the guy's like, let me know if you need to leave. I'm like, oh no, it's nothing to do with that.
Yeah, it's tormenting me.
So he's, this goes on for probably 10 minutes where he's like, oh, once I told him, he's like, oh, I thought for sure you were like ready to get out of here. You kept looking at your watch. I'm like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I start by telling people this isn't a watch. This is a computer that I wear. It's a wearable. Boom. We've looped back around.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, before we dive into all that, whew, see, we are rabbit hole crazy this morning. Yeah. We're already like 2 hours behind on our recording because we got into a rabbit hole. And here we go.
It's a good one and we're tormented by it, but it's a rabbit hole.
Yeah. So anyway, before we dive into more of the wearables and all that good stuff and the questions around that, got anything coming up other than the boot camp?
Well, the boot camp is really the big focus because I am going in so many different places right now. I'm having so many conversations about speaking at places, and we're going back and forth on my schedule, and we're moving stuff around. I've just moved stuff from May out to July, and so I'm speaking in Macon at a thing, and I got another thing asking me to speak in Macon. I got a thing in Virginia, but we couldn't make that one work out. I got something in Phoenix, but I don't know. That's a long way to go for an hour,
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of other stuff I can tie to it, but I'm trying to sort it all out. And but I'm definitely speaking in like next week, maybe. Or and maybe next week or a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
In February, I'm speaking in Macon at an MGMA thing, and somewhere I've got a lot of things I got to do. So clearly, I'm speaking somewhere. But look how confused I am. I'm going to have Elizabeth record where I'm speaking and when, so that then I can just give that to Bo and she can fill in the clip.
Yep.
That's an idea. She'll love that.
Yep. So I've got a conference I'll be speaking at so here I go. I'm like, I don't remember when it was, April.
Yeah.
So out in Vegas. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully this
go.
time what happens in Vegas will actually not stay in Vegas and people will learn something and take it back with them. But so other topics I'm speaking on that's not HIPAA related, but we won't go into those. In different places around the world. So,
indeed.
Anyway, so don't you want to tell everybody something?
Happy Valentine's Day. Happy VD. Happy VD.
Happy VD. Yeah.
Yes, I did put that in there so I could.
Yeah. So all the guys listening are like, crap. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Go to the store, fight the crowds, get your card,
pay extra.
Yeah. So
you should, because you screwed up. You need to pay extra.
Look, I'm gonna tell you. Let me give you a little secret. There's these things called cemeteries. They have free flowers.
Those old plastic ones.
Just go by there in the morning. Get you some flowers.
Yeah, I can see why your wife
my wife
teeters on us. She hanging around or not?
No, my wife is awesome because she's like, do not waste your money on flowers. I'm like, okay,
I know, right?
Great, I won't.
It's what happens after you're not courting anymore.
Yeah, I know. All righty.
Yeah, but to me, it's like if you're doing your job, that should just be like any other day.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really in the relationship and you're not just going through and checking the boxes.
Yes.
Check the boxes. You're doing Valentine's Day, anniversary, birthday.
Right. So if
that's it, you're done.
Yeah. And honestly, if you haven't gotten her anything for Valentine's Day, you did not do a proper risk assessment.
All right. So, but don't forget the boot camp. We're coming up on, like, when this is released, you're right at the end of the early bird for March. So that is March 24th, 25th, 26th at the HIPAA bootcamp.com.
How many more seats do we have anyway? I know it's got to be at least 75% full.
It's yeah. Well, I don't know by this time because we've gotten several in the last few days, but yeah, we've locked in more in the last bit that has us. I think we're over half. We're over half full. I just can't remember how much.
You just don't know which half is full.
Here we go.
All right. Well, we do want to do a little shout out to our donors. Thanks for giving blood and money. It does help out. And we've got actually one of our donations is coming from George to help us do some revamping of some artwork. So thanks to George. And we're still working on that. It's a process. So if you do want to do that, you can head over to our website, helpmewithhip.com, if you want to donate one time or all the time, whatever you want to do. And you can also leave a review on our Facebook page or iTunes even. We do love the reviews. So you can do that while we take this break.
2/3 of small businesses that experience a cybersecurity breach end up closing their doors within 6 months. Cyber criminals are targeting your practice and coming after your most sensitive data. Visit us online and schedule a time to talk about what you can do to protect yourself, your patients, and your practice. Our website is securityfirstit.com. That's securityfirstit.com.
Does your business work with medical practices? As a medical practice business associate, do you realize that if you have access to patient information, you have to follow the same HIPAA rules as your client? Call Carden today at 678-292-5001 so they can assess your privacy and security practices to help ensure you are protected and prepared. Visit cardenhq.com to learn more. All right, we're back. Put your pencils and pens down. Time to learn.
Oh, no.
All right, so let's get into the wearables, and then we have some listener questions coming up at the end and all that, and then we've had some ruling happen on patient access fees, which we did an entire episode about not too long ago. So got a lot to hit today.
Yeah, I couldn't narrow it down. There's just too many. We go through a little bit of time where there's not a lot, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're overwhelmed, and we can't decide. And let me just tell you something: you don't need me with ADD and overly stimulated.
Yeah. So you want to talk? You want to start with like kind of the in the news stuff?
Yeah, it's easier. We've gotten tons of questions lately.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure we hit them, and we apologize to all of those people that it took weeks to get back to them.
I try to tell you.
Well, what we, or also known as I, didn't get back to you because we have been busy. And,
yeah.
If you really want to have some fun, specifically ask a complicated HIPAA question and say, David, do you know the answer? Because that would be fun. Anyway, even my team sends them into the podcast because they can't get an answer from me. Sometimes, they're like, this is not urgent enough. So we'll just send it into the podcast because she'll eventually read it and answer it.
Yeah, they will create a fake name so she won't know it's us.
I know, like
Carla.
we would believe that, I know, right? She told me she was going to be Carla from Kalamazoo, and I was like, or Carla from the Keys, or whatever. I know it's you.
Yeah, if they rhyme, it's her.
All right, but I do have several news articles that just where I'm like, that's important to note on the PsyOx thing. But the others, I'm like, seriously?
Yeah. Let's start with stupid.
You can't fix stupid.
I know.
You can't. And often stupid creates arrogance.
Yeah.
And they feed each other.
Yeah. But it's like I often say, even though you can't fix it, you can charge for it.
That's right. So this is a dentist.
Say no more. Say no more.
I know that we constantly battle these issues. Recently some have started having better conversations with me. So
yeah, apparently, if you're a dentist in Alaska, though, you have to entertain yourself.
Well, this guy did. All right, so I can't even. It could be ignorance. It could be arrogance. It could be boredom. He's entertaining himself. I don't know. But why would anyone think that you should do oral surgery on a sedated patient while standing on a hoverboard and have it videotaped? First of all, none of that match. First of all, you're going to do it. It's absolutely wrong. But then you're going to have it videotaped and share it with people. Videotaped. You're going to record it. And, but people say that. Did you tape that? No, there's no tape. It's an SSD. Anyways, or it went right to the cloud.
Yeah.
But that's what he did. He did. And so in January, Seth Lockhart, he's convicted of 46 counts of felony medical assistance fraud and scheming to defraud, plus a variety of misdemeanors for illegally practicing dentistry and reckless endangerment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, none of those have been hit with HIPAA yet. This is just the first round, because there's got to be more. I mean, but when you read and there, put a link to the court information and not just articles, but there was a lot of evidence.
When you're breaking the law, you probably don't want to put videos on YouTube of you doing stupid stuff.
He just shared it out. But the quote I loved, I mean, he had fraud schemes against Medicaid, and he literally thought he was never going to get caught. They know this because they have all kinds of text, photos, and videos of him talking about he's not going to get caught.
This is classic.
I know. And it also involved his office administrator was involved in it, and he didn't own the practice. He was one of the physicians hired by the dental practice. Okay, so when they put a quote in that says there's a lot of evidence and quote was often supported and often in excruciating detail by Lockhart's own text, photos, and videos. That's what the prosecutor said. Excruciating.
Yeah, let's get his so his last name is Lockhart.
Lockhart.
Yeah. So because I did that too, I was like Lockhart. Yeah. So let's blame the right person. It's Lockhart.
Lockhart. Sorry, Seth Lockhart. All you Seth Lockharts, I apologize. For all the Seth Lockharts that did the hoverboard.
Yeah, there's some dentist doing hoverboard named Lockhart. It's like, dang it.
I know. Now I'm caught.
She outed me.
So anyway, here's the other kicker is, that the patient testified in court, the patient that's on the video, which was not obscured. They knew who it was. The patient's on the, and she never agreed. As she said, I never agreed to oral surgery while hoverboarding. And she never agreed to being filmed while she was at it. And when they said, if she had been asked, what would she say? And her answer was, hell no. And I thought, okay.
Yeah, you should have read it before you signed it.
I know, right? So this is the Alaska Attorney, Department of Law, Attorney General, whatever, in their announcement. There's a ton of stuff in there. They were ordering IV sedatives for Medicaid patients because they could make a bunch of extra money on it. And then they had another account and they were filing it differently and had money going to his. I mean, it was a mess. I feel sorry for the other doctors because we know how complicated that could be. There's other doctors that, there's somebody in your practice that's doing something and you find out about it and you kick them out, but you still got to deal with the investigation and the patients and these guys feel awful. Usually, they're horrified by what's happened.
Every time something like this happens, I hear that voice that says, but they've been here for 10 years and they would never do such a thing. And I'm like, oh, come on.
Jeez. Yeah. That one's painful. And the number of times that you hear it when they've caught somebody who had worked there for 20 years, who had worked there for 15, 10 years, whatever, 9 years. It can happen, but, the ones that are short timers, if they're there for a very short amount of time, that might be, but it's those ones who have been there long enough to become thinking they're not going to get caught, but they can do whatever they want.
Yep.
So we'll see if OCR makes a run at the case, because clearly there was a violation in many ways. Hadn't been sentenced yet, but it can be sentenced up to 10 years in prison for the 46 counts, I think they said. So, let's see see what happens with OCR, because are they going to look at it as a failure of that one dentist, or is it a failure of the practice? And that could get tricky. All right, so on to our next news story. And this one, all you MSPs out there, need to be paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that document. That's going to be it, because here we come with another issue the same way, which is it's a Ohio company that and at first the heading, I'm like, I don't get it. The heading, the first one that I read, it was Boardman Business sues IT provider over $1.7 million hacking theft.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, Boardman? Is that the board members? And, I get confused easy, and I'm in a hurry. So, but anyway, what it is this company called Boardman, and they make a lot of products. And so it's not in healthcare, but in a minute, you'll understand why we're bringing this up, because it's probably, if it hasn't already happened, it is happening. In this lawsuit against their IT provider, the company says the IT provider, it's their fault that lack security resulted in hackers stealing the 1.7 million, 1,750,000, where they hacked an email account and then sent invoices, and it was a pretty elaborate scheme. And we both know that they happen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That they get into the email accounts, they review who proper vendors are, they send information about make a payment on this invoice, then they intercept it, and the money ended up going to Hong Kong and Cambodia.
Yeah. So
the suit is for service order and professional negligence and malpractice. There must have been some limitation in what they could sue, because it's only for $25,000 plus legal fees. But there's a link for all the juicy details. The bottom line is this IT company, am I going to mispronounce this one? Involta LLC of Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
They hired this Boardman hired them in 2017 to provide security protections for protecting their business data.
Yeah, sounds good so far.
A 3-year contract for just shy, I love these prices, $10,995 a month.
They got a Walmart plan.
Yeah. So $995. So $11,000 a month they have been paying the IT company to protect them.
Mm-hmm.
They were a little less than happy that they weren't protected.
Yeah.
And so according to Boardman anyway, that once they figured out something was going on, they contact Involta, and Involta told them, there's no problem. There's no breach of your email, and closed the ticket.
Mm-hmm.
They said, it's your problem. Your people fell for it. It wasn't our fault. Yeah. Even if you think it's not your fault, you do not do that, number one. Number two, you just close the ticket and hang up on somebody. If that's what your help desk is doing when somebody thinks they have a data breach, sorry, this is wrong. This is where we get a bad name. And even though the lawsuit barely covers a little over 2 months of what they've paid them, you would expect. Anyway, this company is in Iowa. Boardman is in Ohio. And this is one of those cases where Involta acquired 2 MSPs in Ohio. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And because that's happening in the MSP world, they're going out and buying up these smaller ones and kind of taking over their client base and becoming the name to go to in these smaller areas. So the other allegations, the internal IT staff was not allowed to do anything with security settings and had no authority within the system. Talk about, I get it, but there's got to be balance, right? Don't you?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Well, thanks for all that input.
Well, it's, you got an IT staff on site. I don't understand why they're not working together.
It's clearly a large company with that monthly nut for IT services. If you have an on-site person, why are they not working together? Why is it that the security people just lock out the local person as if they're, not trustworthy. That right there is a red flag to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Well, it does make you wonder. I mean, there's a lot of questions. I mean, we're only getting half the story, the side coming from Boardman and the legal documents. But it starts to make you wonder, which really is not the moral of the story is not what happened as much as it's, it speaks to how are you going to, number one, make sure you're providing services that you should. Number two, do you have communications with your clients so that they understand what you're doing for them and you understand what they think that you're doing for them.
Exactly. We talk about it all the time. Clear definition of responsibilities.
Yeah. And then of course, document.
Because, the IT company has not responded to this lawsuit that was published, and it's in the news everywhere. No response from them, which I find interesting.
Yeah, that's almost like, something must be there.
Yeah, that's what you got to feel like is they're trying to figure out how to do damage control instead of, taking the battle to the enemy, so to speak. So, because according to their allegations, their internal people weren't able to do anything. And I have to say, it's not like I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
You and I both know it goes on. That they don't work together, and it's this us versus them mentality instead of we're partners. And then the second thing is they claim, and if there's proof of this, this could get could get tricky.
Yeah, if they can prove with the next point you're about to make, it's gonna be hurtful.
Yeah, that they claim that not all of their computers were protected by antivirus, which they call, and you both, that could be any number of protection software, but they did not have any kind of virus protection on all of their computers. Some of them were missing, and I've heard of that happening.
Oh, yeah.
Where with good intentions, you think you've got them all, but no one's auditing it.
Mm-hmm.
No one's saying we have this many devices and we have this many covered. Wait a minute, those should match.
Yeah.
That's all it takes, but no one was doing it. And they say that once they did run it, because obviously they brought in another forensics person to solve the problem, they found 114 infections just weeks after the attack. So here's the big thing, though. So this is dicey. This is not looking good. There's no matter which way it goes, this is a bad situation. But here's the big reason I shared that. There's two reasons that it should be important to us, that IT providers, you're going to have to be part of the solution because this is happening.
Mm-hmm. But
according to the other part of it is, according to the IT company's website, Involta, is healthcare is 38% of Involta's business, reaching 13 states.
Uh-oh.
So we're going to need to watch that one closely. Because obviously it's not a small company. They're in 13 states. And if 38% of their business is healthcare and these allegations do pan out, we may have a bigger issue in healthcare clients of theirs than just what these guys are going through. So certainly worth watching. And then you got the PsyOx ruling, which is it's something we've been watching for a while. We talked about this repeatedly. Good news is it looks like it's settled pretty well the way in our very first time we were talking about this, we talked about what's the spirit of the law.
Yeah. They're just confirming. Honestly, I think it just goes back to they heard the episode and they're like, we just need to do a ruling on this so that they understand that the Help Me with HIPAA guys are correct.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's where we're at.
What's funny is we had to do the second episode to clarify even further because of what some of the third parties were doing. But, and that's kind of going to go by the wayside. That problem, the solution isn't changing. The problem will go by the wayside. But more importantly, the issue is that they hit on three areas. And all of our original discussion kind of goes by what the final ruling ended up being.
Mm-hmm.
So this lawsuit came out right after the 2016 guidance from OCR about patient access and what could be charged, reasonable fees. And yeah, I'll put links to all of those episodes in there. But the quote that is in the ruling, which of course that's really what I've tried to read, is the ruling itself. Because Ciox is a retrieval company. So their way they make money is that the verification, the minimum uses and disclosures, all that work, practices outsource that. Hospitals, providers, whatever, they outsource that to Ciox, who takes a request for patient records. They do the review, they search it, they, retrieval, formatting, and send it off. And they get paid to do that. And then one of their big sales things is you're allowed to charge for our services. So it's mostly a wash for you. Mm-hmm. That you charge what you're allowed to charge, and that pretty much covers our fees, and you're good to go, and you don't have to invest in doing this work. Makes sense? And that ruling came out in 2016 that said if a patient makes the request, even to send to a third party in this certain way, then you can only charge them the patient rate. Right. And here's how the patient rate can be calculated. And the quote was that I like, because this is exactly what we mentioned in our first part. For years, the medical records industry understood that the limitations imposed by the, quote, patient rate applied only to requests for PHI made by the patient for use by the patient. For other types of requests, such as those made by commercial entities like insurance companies and law firms, we're talking about you. The records industry understood that the allowable fee was not restricted by the patient rate, which is true. Mm-hmm. And that's how it had worked right up until that 26 guidance, which we now know is the $6.50 guidance, where you get these notifications from these attorneys. You're violating high tech unless you give me this for $6.50.
Nay.
Probably that, where this was going, it kind of, between us fighting constantly and all the letters I had to write to attorneys, and I'm glad this is going to be over because, you can kind of forget everything that we told you, but not really. Really, it's the spirit of the law, because there were 3 points in the suit. When can the patient rate be used for third parties? Does it have to be blah, blah, blah? What can be included in the patient rate? The labor fees, the alternative calculations, those kind of things. And then the requirement to send PHI to third parties, if the patient requests that it goes electronically, even if you don't have it electronically, there was a lot of pressure to send it electronically. I don't think that necessarily changes. What their point was, if we're already storing it electronically in the EHR, that's one thing. But if it's in a practice management thing and we're supposed to include it with the stored EHR, that's a lot of work to create, electronic copies of stuff that's in multiple places in multiple formats. Mm-hmm. So they're saying we shouldn't have to do that. So the court, the court, I always love it when it says HHS's motion to dismiss is granted in part and denied in part. Mm-hmm. And the parties' cross motions are granted in part and denied in part. I'm like, awesome. I'm going to read that later. But basically, they agreed with Ciox on the third party fees don't have to use the patient right? Mm-hmm. And that format mandate of non-electronic stuff, that's wiped out. But how you calculate the patient rate, that hasn't changed. So it goes back to the spirit of law, which we were, in my opinion, we were always at. But we're going to have to watch this while the lawyers attack it, because we know they will.
Oh, yeah.
But the bottom line is really the only thing that's changed for all of our people is you don't have to use the patient rate for any third party anymore.
If it's not a patient, then they don't get the patient rate.
Well, it goes back to the whole thing is that if you want the patient rate, then you let the patient receive it, and then the patient can send it on, to somebody else.
If they want to.
Yeah, but it's still, you need to be reasonable because, these exorbitant fees, those have got to stop. That people can't get health care because they can't get their record sent somewhere else. So we're going to keep an eye on that.
All righty.
All right. Next, here we have our first question of the day.
Da-dum. Yep.
Okay. This is from Krista with a K.
Not our Krista.
Not Krista Chartman.
Not Trista.
Krista.
Trista.
Anyways, it's hard to believe this, but we are still talking about faxing on a regular basis.
Yeah, I know. It's like, wow, people still do that?
I know. It's like, I talk about remembering in like, I want to say the early 90s, getting a fax for the first time.
Oh, you're like, dude,
with
this
the thermal
is,
paper.
I know. I mean, it was like,
late 80s, early 90s, it was right around there where all the businesses were getting those thermal paper where it rolled up as it came off.
Yeah. I remember the first time I saw one come out, and it was like, I felt like it was teleportation or something. It's like, what?
It was so cool.
This is crazy.
Yeah. I remember I plugged the one in at the office. I called one of my clients, such a good friend, wonderful, hysterical person. She passed away a few years ago. It still breaks my heart to have lost her. But she would like put a rubber chicken on the computer when I got there. I mean, she was always funny. And let's just say that she gave me the middle finger salute. She copied that on a copier and then sent that through the fax because I said, you get to be the first one to send us a fax. I'll be right here waiting. Now, what I didn't tell her is everybody else was going to gather around because we were getting a fax. And all of a sudden, all you see is the tip of the finger coming out.
Yeah, because it was slow back then.
Yeah, it's like, so you can imagine everybody going, what the? And then finally you start to see what you're seeing and you can't stop it. And so I'm calling her, everybody's watching this. Oh, that was bad. But anyway, it was hysterical, but that's kind of the only difference today is that it comes on a laser printer. Is the technology is exactly the same as far as how it's transmitted.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're in healthcare, you still talk about faxing. If you're not in healthcare, there's some people that don't even, there's plenty of folks that have never faxed anything, like seen a fax machine.
Yeah.
And understood what you do.
And they do have the electronic faxing, which is, kind of a misnomer because, if you're faxing from your computer to a third party storage thing it's basically like secure email.
Yeah. But we still go through that. It's a whole different story. But we're not going to talk about the actual technology behind the faxing or anything because the question that Krista sent in is, she didn't argue about like we do. Why are we doing faxing? It's like turning the Titanic to get healthcare to change. But she said, is there a HIPAA rule that says you must send a fax cover sheet when sending PHI? Or do you just need the fax disclaimer on it somewhere?
Okay.
And she's one of the ones that I beg forgiveness for David not answering.
I would have been like, no, next.
See, most of these people that send us questions have to turn around and tell other people, and they go, why?
I know.
So the first thing is HIPAA never mentions faxing.
See, I was right.
Never mentions faxing, never mentions fax cover sheets. The only time faxing is mentioned is that a fax number could be part of PHI. That's it. The only time you'll see it. All right. So, but what it does say is in the privacy rule that you must make reasonably safeguard protected health information to limit incidental uses or disclosures made pursuant to an otherwise permitted or required use or disclosure. It goes around, tells you, all those conditions when you're allowed to send PHI or receive it. That's basically it. But if you are disclosing it, no matter how you do it, you should make reasonable, and that's the hard part sometimes, safeguards to protect it based on how you're disclosing it. There you go.
Yep.
So your organization needs to define what they feel are reasonable, appropriate safeguards for protecting faxes. So there's generally two reasons that people think you should do a cover sheet. And if you search this, you will find it everywhere HIPAA requires a cover sheet. It's all over the place.
I know.
But that is not true. But if you are making reasonable safeguards, cover sheet may come into play. So they say that, depending on how the machine works, which you have no control over, the cover sheet should end up on top, which would prevent the exposure of PHI for somebody just, picking it up and looking at the first page, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it'll say this is PHI and it'll cover it up so that you don't even go looking at it. But how many people are going to do that? I don't know. But you see that and you're like, PHI, I wonder what I'm getting. Let me look.
What's that?
But it also makes it clear that the information is confidential and needs to be protected. So you've got that laying right on top of the PHI. Before anybody looks at it, they're supposed to see that. There are other safeguards that should, be considered. Making sure you have the correct fax number. We just had the settlement. Well, it didn't just have it. What was it? 2018 maybe. Wow. Where they faxed to the wrong fax number an entire medical record. And yeah, it was not good when the guy at the office, somebody brings over and hands it to him and says, I don't think you want this going around the office. This is an entire medical record, including the fact that he's HIV positive, which no one knew. Because they used an improper fax number. It was on the patient's record, but it was not the way the records were supposed to be sent. We're in a loop. So, limited access to fax machines, it's things that you would call prudent precautions.
Yeah. Well, you go back to you said reasonable and appropriate, right? Mm-hmm. But what I'm finding is that there are oftentimes unreasonable people trying to make reasonable safeguards.
Mm-hmm.
Like the person that told me this week that I was being unreasonable to think that he should have to buy his own computers for his own practice instead of sharing them with the practice in the same building. So I just can't understand how that was unreasonable.
Yeah, I want you to secure this for 2 separate practices, 2 separate policies and procedures, 2 separate everything. You can share them if you're sharing staff. And you're not going to let anybody save anything. And I mean, they would never be able to secure it properly.
Yeah.
Which is what you're telling me.
Well, the funny part was that the other provider said, well, I'll just make this other provider part of my workforce. Okay, you're going to take a plastic surgeon and make them part of your dental practice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It can be done. You can be. There's ways. It's just, if they're being that squirrely in the beginning.
Yeah, but you're going to go through all that trouble so you don't have to buy 3 computers.
I know. If they're being that swirly in the beginning, it's not looking well. It's not going to bode well. You don't want to go down that path.
Yeah, that's like, no, you can call somebody else. There's plenty of IT people out there that will
handle 3 computers and not care.
Yeah, they'll be happy to help you with your non-HIPAA compliance.
That's right. They'll be happy to help you do this. And I'm sure there's no written policies and procedures that you have planned or anything. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, not reasonable.
Not reasonable and appropriate.
It's unreasonable to think I should have all this documentation.
Yeah. Yeah. So you see this stuff all over everywhere you look. HIPAA requires cover sheets. HIPAA requires, and there's some that even say that the cover sheet must include certain information.
Yeah.
Okay. That HIPAA requires it. And then they want you to prove the negative when you say, no, it doesn't. So anyway, I'm like, go read the law and you show me. But you can't also just slap any disclaimer on there because you want to make sure that whatever disclaimer you put on there doesn't negate, like if you're sending it to a business associate and your disclaimer says this is what you're supposed to do, and it doesn't include, hey, if you're a business associate, this doesn't count. It could negate what's in your BAA, which lawyers are like, it gets tricky, but I mean, look at what we just talked about the lawsuit.
Yeah.
So, and even there's a FAQ on HHS's website that's specifically, does HIPAA permit a doctor to share information over the phone or with a fax? And I'm pretty sure if it was a required element when they're discussing a fax in there, you can do it, but you must do blah would have been included, and it is not. Okay, so again, there you go, Krista with a K. And good luck with that, because I don't know what you got up against it. All right. So then we have Leanne sent us one. Her also delayed in responding.
Try to tell you again.
I know. But, I buckled down, I sent them, and I put them in the show notes. And one of the things that made me get them done was deciding, okay, well, let's just do an episode on questions. So maybe that's just the way I have to do this. All right. So she says they're a behavioral health agency. We get funds to house our clients. We're trying to contract to use a property management software that will log name, address, and phone number. While we can't create a unique identifier for the name, we have other items, though. They will not sign a BAA and wonder if we can use an authorization to disclose documents for each client. My response probably wasn't very helpful because this one's a complicated one,
This is a fact-specific determination.
Yeah. It's kind of tricky. So, but really based on all the only pieces that I know, if your software they're going to use, if it's going to store housing information, patient name, and it's going to tie it back to them, I mean, now you've got identifiable PHI and health information. And it would be really hard to argue that it wasn't PHI.
Mm-hmm.
And then behavioral health, depending on what they're doing, they could have some additional requirements if they're doing rehab and those kind of things. So, they may have super private requirements, and that would complicate it anyway. So I said, I'm not, no way I'm going to recommend using that service without doing a deep dive. But, maybe there's another tool that you're already using that you could do this with that doesn't require the property management, or try to find another solution that is used by behavioral health. But there are way too many variables there unless we were able to say A, B, C, D, E.
Yeah. Or, try to find something that's not cloud-based, because it sounds like this is.
Yeah. And we've run into this before. So there you go. And finally, we get to wearables. And this is where we started. You get what you pay for kind of thing with our free answers, and this one came from my team. Carla, we know, from Kalamazoo. All right. So what are the technical safeguards that organizations need to look out for with wearable health devices? And she mentions a company called, that one of our clients was looking at, called Vital Tech. And it would be designed for seniors in assisted living to help track and manage their care, because you would give them a wearable and then we, keep all this information.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's different from one that the consumer would go get themselves, like the Apple Watch and the Fitbit, because this one falls under HIPAA. And she's making that distinction that if the doctor or the provider of care, rather, is providing the wearable and having you use it for your care, falls under HIPAA. If you go and buy it, like the Fitbit that's on David's wrist, maybe, and the Apple Watch that's on mine, that does not fall under HIPAA, even though there's healthcare information on it. Same thing with apps. Same thing. So I would ask several questions, off the top of my head. As Carla listed, plenty of them that, where's the data stored, US or not? Is it a, quote, HIPAA compliant platform? Is the data encrypted in rest and transit? What are the security policies? So you would basically vet them just like you would your EHR vendor or any other application vendor. But with the device, you should also take it a step further. And that is in understanding what software is on the device, what firmware is on the device, how's that going to be updated, those kind of things, and who's going to be responsible for it, and who's going to monitor the security of it. And what access do those have to the network? How do they connect back and give their information? You have to understand all of that transmittal, not just, you have to understand how it works enough to define who's responsible for protecting it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for adding so much to that conversation.
Mm-hmm. You was right.
But yeah, you got to vet both the device and the software.
Yep.
Those are two different things, and they need to be handled that way, just like any other of these medical devices. You need to be looking at both pieces because it takes both.
It's a mess.
Indeed. It is a huge mess.
All right. Well, so you threw your inbox now, right?
No, I think there's still a couple more.
I
just couldn't,
Gotta save some for next time. All right. So if we didn't answer your question, we'll get to it next month.
As soon as I can. I'm trying. There's just so much. All right.
Yeah. So I have to stay off Facebook because I get called into conversations. Yeah. That's just.
Yeah. That's what got us today. It's your fault.
It is. Yeah. Well, it's not my fault. Yes, my fault for trying to help people. Yeah. You get this like, oh, I got mentioned in a post. And you go over there and like, oh, man, they just gave me homework. So,
yeah.
Anyway. All right. So that's our show for today, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember to follow us and share us out on your favorite social media site. Rate us on our podcasting app. iTunes is a great place to rate us. And remember to just, in general, share it.
Apple Podcasts, not iTunes. I just feel like I have to do that every time. So I keep going.
Why can't they just make up their mind?
It's been that way for over a year.
Okay. That was yesterday for me. All right. Apple Podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Got it? Apple Podcast.
Mm-hmm. You're allowed. Moving on.
Anyway, send in your questions to Donna. She'll get to them sometime this year.
Hey, start doing it.
Remember, for Donna and myself, that HIPAA is not about getting quick answers from Donna. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.